Hello everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar. We will start in a couple of minutes. So I think we can start. I think in a couple of minutes more people will join while I'm introducing the session today. First of all, thank you to join us today and welcome to our third webinar in the series of ULTIMO Frontier, Let's Talk Automated Mobility. My name is Daria and I'm Senior Manager in the Knowledge and Innovation Department at UITP. I will be your moderator today in a very light capacity, so ensuring the webinar runs smoothly and that we address all your questions. Today's session will focus on data with a particular emphasis on the EU Data Act and how companies can leverage it to their benefit. And the topic is especially timely as the Data Act is set to come into force this year. But how can companies prepare to it? It's not just about updating procurement documentation, it goes far beyond that. And our speaker today, Arthur van der Wees, Managing Director of Arthur's Legal Strategies and Systems, and the partner in the ULTIMO project, will explore these opportunities in a practical and actionable way. And it's worth also noting that the wheel is already in motion. Just last month, the European Commission organized general webinars on the Data Act. However, today we will take a closer look at how it specifically applies to mobility and logistics. And before I hand over to Arthur, I'd like to remind you that this webinar is organized as a part of the ULTIMO project, funded by the European Commission and co-funded by the Swiss government. And just a couple of words about the project. ULTIMO aims to deploy economically viable, large-scale, on-demand and passenger-oriented automated vehicle public transportation services across Europe. And more broadly, this four-year project with 23 partners in total aims to validate integrated shared SICAM systems and services for people and goods across Europe while enabling large-scale, multi-vendor deployments tailored to diverse transport use cases. It focuses on developing open source APIs for seamless integration into MaaS and LaaS systems, establishing reusable HD map models, improving safety and service quality, and designing cross-sectoral business models to support the long-term transition to automated vehicle deployment. So you can imagine how much data we generate, and in general, the automated mobility sector. So ULTIMO is deploying automated vehicles fleets across 3 sites in Europe, showcasing diverse use cases for the EV integration. So, for example, for Herford in Germany, autonomous minibuses are seamlessly integrated into the existing public transport system, enhancing accessibility and connectivity within the region. In Groruddalen Valley in Oslo, automated vehicles operating as a competitive service to private transport, fully integrated with other traffic, and these EVs drive in the free float mode, catering to the everyday mobility needs of passengers in the area. And the third use case, the third demo site is Belle Idée Estate in Geneva. Here, self-driving services connecting key facilities, such as hospital and kindergarten, while other offering services as logistics as a service, providing a competitive and versatile mobility solution. This is all the project partners, and more information about the vision, implementation, and activities, of course, can be found on the ULTIMO website. I will send this information to the Q&A section, as well as our LinkedIn page and the blog of Arthur that he prepared just before the webinar. And now I would like to come back to the topic of our conversation today. And I would like to hand over the floor to Arthur. So Arthur, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Daria, and good afternoon or good evening or good morning to everybody here in the call. We have a good turn up, and I think we'll get some more even along the way. So I'm gonna definitely share my screen. If I share my screen, then I do not generally see you anymore, but that is not an issue. So let's just...
I can also notify you if we have a questions in Q&A section.
Sure, yeah. Here we are, 1 second. All clear?
Perfect.
Okay. So again, welcome everybody. Thanks, Daria, for the introduction about Project ULTIMO, which is a successive project from a previous one that was run for 3 years before, called Avenue. Also interesting to have a look at that particular project website, and of course also the related projects running in Europe, including Norway, of course, we are indeed trying to further what we did at Avenue. More there, we were focusing on the technology, and in this project, indeed, we are focusing on the application, and then of course all the issues or barriers that may be there, and all opportunities that are there. So we indeed thought it made sense to look into this particular domain. The reason why I give this presentation is one of the reasons is next to that, we need Arthur's Legal Strategy Systems is a consortium partner. I was also advisory board member of the previous project, and we did quite a lot of things already for a long time in multimodality on all layers in the geospatial domain. And also I'm one of the expert members of the expert group of the Article 41 Data Act, where we're focusing on drafting model contractual clauses to hopefully help out and ease the way of working together. We will talk about that for sure later on as well. So I have 3 topics, even though I have an introduction beforehand. Talk about data blocking and busting excuses. Then, of course, making it positive towards empowerment and by unlocking data and opportunities. And then, of course, as already Daria mentioned, at a certain point, and it is already there, as effect of life, customer user is in control. If we ask that to them or say that to them, generally they don't know what to do with it. So that's one of the reasons why we thought it was good to talk about this and have this webinar. I'm not able to cover everything in less than 1.5 hours. I have tried my best to do so, but that won't be, of course, possible. But so if I go through slides quickly, they will be shared later on. I'm not going to read them one by one. They're just as an overview for my voiceover. But there's some more information in there. All the links that are made available later on in this presentation are all root source to the particular source that may be interested for you to further have a look. So you can also do some homework later on yourself, including, for instance, this hyperlink you see there on Europe's Choice, which is a political guideline document from June last year. And this is just the first chapter of the blog that already Daria referred to. Link is right there as well. Hopefully you have taken a look at it. I just have it, certain blocks I just put in the presentation for people that have not looked into it or just browse through it quickly. The nice thing about this is that we make it very indeed timely. The Commission just has started a month ago. They have very clear focus points and missions. These are examples of 7 missions that are mentioned in that particular guideline. They are also coming back in the mission letters that the President of the Commission has issued to all the commissioners, and as you know, the Commission now is in full force. Again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Commission, but if I translate it, it's really about getting out of our comfort zone, making the right choices and deliver. The choice is not theirs, the choice is ours. So everybody here in the call, it's our responsibility to make this work on all sides of the market. So that's what I'm trying to help you out with. We're focusing on a level 4. If we talk about level 4, then we're using currently this particular guideline where, as Daria mentioned, with the 3 use cases, there is no chauffeur or operator. Well, that's the plan. No operator in the vehicle. Everything is by wire, so there's no steering wheel, so that is the aim. And with that, of course, try to come up with new mobility solutions as a service on demand, and then also, as you saw in the little in the logo, and so here bottom right as well, we anticipate that mobility, so a part of moving to persons, maybe something for during the day, a certain time of the day, where other times of the day we want to make full use of the assets, the platform, for instance, for logistics or distribution. And that's, of course, something to be to discuss and to think about. Not necessarily together in one shuttle. There are all kind of regulation, there are hurdles there if you put people next to boxes, but so that's just so the logo is not. We're not advocating that necessarily, but any use case or an OPEX model that is part of this particular project. Very quickly on the technical layers, and of course, it's a very simplistic approach. We have a platform with 2 wheels front, 2 wheels left, and then something either in the middle or on top, which is a body. And of course, you need to have an advanced system to help out with driving it. It actually should be, in my point of view, an advanced driving assistance system, because there's no driver anymore. But anyway, I just used the term that is currently used for a long time. And then, of course, you need to have an interface either towards the logistics company, towards the operator, or to multiple logistical or distributors that are using a particular platform or platforms together, and of course also related to the authorities, the public transport authority, the public transport the operator, and other stakeholders that, and of course, don't forget the passengers or the persons that want to book a particular ride. So that's the interface between user. The user is so therefore not only passenger, just to be clear. We're not focusing on one particular thing because this is just a platform, it's a technology. Of course, the nice thing, in my view, even though it makes it complex, but with complexity comes opportunity. Of course, this needs to be running and driving around, maneuvering in a physical infrastructure, on the roads, this one, all kind of different places, either in cities or urban, suburban, or rural. Indeed, we do have all three in the pilots that Daria just mentioned. But of course, we're looking way further than that. The other side, of course, already mentioned is the person, the user, not only passenger but also user, the professionals, either near the vehicle or in the vehicle or towards the vehicle that needs to have access, for instance, to certain moments during the day to get certain, let's say, certain goods out of it, or to help out a disabled person with getting in and out or whatever. So that one, and then on the bottom left, don't forget the non-users, the ones that are not immediately there, but the community, society at large. These things will driving around in public domains. So people will, it will be part of their experience as well, whether good or bad. So we need to think about those as well, of course. Last but not least, we have, I guess, already mentioned the operators, whether public transportation or more on the logistic distribution side. Of course, you have road authorities nationally, locally, or otherwise, and many other different stakeholders. So the amount of stakeholders is way more than just either an operator running a particular platform or a vehicle or platform provider providing the platform to the operator. So that is good to keep in mind while I'm talking about data later on. Again, we're not focusing on one. At Ultimo, the plan is to have 15 in each of these sites. It's a big challenge, but these things, not only one vendor, but multi-vendor, which gives new exciting opportunities and of course also complexity. But that's also why is good that what I see on the list of registrants this afternoon. There are quite a few OEMs in the call, and I'm very happy that they're here as well. Moving back to the blog, the focus indeed of Ultimo is not only focusing on mobility for persons, but really have a multi-vendor platform approach, multi-actor, people-centric, societal-centric, and indeed it needs to be viable. Neither the service should be too expensive, but also it needs to be long-term. The platform shouldn't break down. We want to make them use them as to the maximum extent possible. So it would be good to know about, predictive maintenance capability, prognostic health monitoring, all kind of things like that. So if a logistic operator or a public transport operator is want to plan the particular vehicle in their program, that it knows, it's all good for the particular mission at hand during that day. So one of the examples of that you will need some data for that. On the one hand, we are lacking in the project also, but lacking vehicles that actually cater for the particular wishes. And on the other hand, I also see a lack of demand side comfort and confidence and courage to actually seriously interact with the market and all the stakeholders, even though there is a willingness to do it. Don't forget, I'm very positive about it, but still, we really need to help out on all sides of the market to bring more comfort, confidence, and courage to work together, to act, and to make decisions. On the blog, as I mentioned already, very quickly early, we really need to get out of our comfort zone. So as I mentioned here, doing more of the same is a very low probability success strategy. Either already on the public transportation side, on the demand side, or on the supply side, or on the data providing side or the data science side. We really need to find alternative approaches to provide those essential services. With that, the market is massive. if I do the calculations already, there's already currently an amount of more than 10 billion euros as we speak, which is currently not used. So I think the money necessarily is not a big issue, but really the fact that we need to find and shape the market in a way that works for everybody. That each of the actors are willing and able to invest and know why they're investing in this, and that they also can make a return, whatever return it is, whether it's return on investment or money-wise or impact-wise, or providing a service to the public, or the combination of those three. So I leave it to you. The other parts I'm not going to mention, but the opportunity, of course, with data, and I see data as a big catalyst to actually spur this, to find those alternative approaches. Meanwhile, people still and organizations on all sides of the table find it quite difficult to share data. So let's talk about that particular part and see whether we can debunk these particular topics. So already when the previous commission was asked, what is the common denominator? Is it 5G? Is it V2X? Is it edge computing? Is it AI? Actually, the answer was data, and I think it's correct to a certain extent, but I will challenge it later on. You will see. But data is a good common denominator. It's a very a good start. Also because having it yourself is great, but sharing it is where you generate value and from all kind of good reasons. There's a lot to share. Data is only 4 letters, but there's a massive amount of things behind. Perhaps that's the reason why we find it difficult to share, because data has different, depending on the context. Already one particular data set may have multiple classifications at the same time. So I do understand that it's generally difficult to find out what the value is, but the good thing is it is not only a means, but it's also an asset. So therefore also business-wise and impact-wise and finance-wise, there are a huge amount and basically a limited amount of use cases and value models, business models that we can explore and hopefully join forces with together, again, on all sides of the market. The one market does not exist if there's only one side, just to be clear on that. So again, as I mentioned, data sharing in all kinds of sectors is not being an easy feat. In this case, if you think about just generally about data sharing, this is just a couple of examples of questions that pop up. Who am I? Who am I representing? Do I have a mandate? Do I feel urgency to share, or and what do I share and what not? What kind of level of comfort do I want to bring in? What's the quality of it? Is it still fresh? Is it relevant? Etc. Etc. Where of course later on it's about the other side. Do I know the other party? What will the recipient do with it? All kind of questions that pop up when we are talking about when you are in your personal life as a consumer or just a global citizen anywhere, but also as a professional for any either public, private, or academia or other sectors. These questions pop up in everyone's mind, depending on neutral of what kind of context you are in at that particular moment of the day. So try to structure it a bit. I've done a lot of homework about this already for a long time. To try to come up with structure the excuses that we have heard and hear, not only in the mobility sector, by the way, but also other sectors. But this one has a lot of good reasons or not really good reasons to not to share. And the answer we get or anybody you get, either doesn't matter from whom, we're not allowed to share because, and then whether you're public sector or private sector again, or in whatever side of the market. You probably recognize quite a few things that you have heard before, either internally in your own organization. We don't know what to share. I don't think we're allowed to. GDPR, compliance, regulatory, or it's classified, or we don't have the policy to share. It's technically not possible. All those kind of things, which could also be boiling down to number 7, basically better safe than sorry. Not sharing perhaps is easier not to, because then I'm not making a mistake. Well, perhaps nowadays, if you don't share, you make a bigger mistake than if you share. But you do. It's really our job and responsibility jointly to try to get rid of these excuses as much as possible, just to be able to start sharing, to start innovating, to do it in a combinatoric way, instead of, well, I know everything myself, I'm not going to share anything. Then you're a splendid isolation market player in the market with one player. So that is not really gonna help or work out. The common denominator, therefore, that runs through all these domains may not be data, but maybe trust. Perhaps that's an even better common denominator to think about. Do I trust my data source? Do I trust sharing it? Am I allowed to have all kind of trust issues, either internally with your own organization as well, if you're reaching out to the next one? If you're a sharer, what's the recipient going to do? The recipient receives it, turns around, it's a sharer then again. So you always are also multiple roles in a whole data ecosystem or a supply chain or a data value chain. So thinking that you only have one role here is definitely not the recommended approach. You need to think about, I am mainly or currently a data sharer, but on the other hand, the fact I'm a sharer is because I also have received certain data. I've processed certain in a certain way, and therefore I can share it and add value in the whole ecosystem. So let's move to the positive side of things. Even though we're already in a positive mode, hopefully you are, at least I am, and talk about the empowerment and the unlocking capabilities that have been created, at least in the EU, the last couple of years. Of course, everybody says, we want to have more control over data. It's somewhere else. We're not able to access it. We would love to do something with it. Okay, so that was heard in 2020, 2019 with the previous commission. They came up with a data strategy, and based on that, and of course they will be working before on these topics as well, already for more than a decade. But still, the last commission really focused on it and delivered on the data strategy, including indeed in the Data Act that we're going to focus on mostly this particular webinar. So okay, now again, take back control. It's all about giving back control. So let's talk about it very quickly on what the policy side has happened the last 5 years. The digital decade definitely is a very good one to have a look at. Again, all the hyperlinked words here are root source to the particular domains. All the member states, all 27, have signed for this. The parliament is in favor, the council, everybody is there. So, nobody can walk away from it to achieve certain objectives by 2030, which is only 5 years. There are particular targets in the objectives. These are also linked to mobility, especially when you think about more the autonomous and the automated side of things on every technical layer, not only software, not only automotive, but everything in between, the cameras, with IoT, with connectivity spectrum, you name it. And it's all basically written well in this particular program that the member states are executing on, and is monitored with monitoring and mechanism by the Commission as well. If we break down what we have added, basically the last decade, where we talked about people, process, technology most of the time, we added data to it, and structured data can be seen as information. Used information can be seen as knowledge, and of course knowledge and information and experience. If you're using knowledge, you're getting more experience. These of course create data themselves as well. So it's a circular model. But the nice thing is, now we have added data to people, process, technology. We can put people, society, including economy, in the middle, which I think makes a lot of sense. Going back to the current commission, the mission letters and the commissioners, in my point of view, the good thing is that this particular topic we talk about here, mobility, logistics, and autonomous, and of course quality of life and improving services to either consumers or others, does not involve one commission or one particular commissioner. So there are multiple commissions and DGs that are applicable. So the yellow one is just to explain that, and then you have the other six, just six as examples. Of course, a sustainable mode transport, which you could say is DG Move, is there, but also other things focusing on startups, on research, innovation, having an investor network to get this going, Innovation Act. Of course, the technical sovereignty and security, Digital Decade 2030. The blue one is, you could say, that's the DG Connect. Talk about cloud and edge computing, investing more in these kind of topics, including with a Cloud and AI Development Act that is currently in an early phase. And many other topics, including the Data Union, which we're going to hear more about, but the Data Act is definitely part of that. So I'm not going to work through all of them, but prosperity in industrial strategy, definitely interesting, not only for the supply side, but also for the demand side, because one of the things is public procurement directives. Even though currently under tendering law, we can already, every public sector body can already tender based on operational expense, but not many are doing it already as a sort of discomfort there. And hopefully the public procurement directive will also help out and give the public sector more comfort in procuring in a different way. Anyway, you see the other topics, including the last one, just to highlight, there's also a particular focus on trade and economic security, not only inbound or in the EU, but also externally, not only with Norway and but also Switzerland, UK, and far beyond, as you may know already. Next to that, we have all probably heard about the Draghi report, probably not read it all, but I can recommend to have a look at it and just search for mobility. Is mentioned over 50 times. So, this is a very important domain also according to Mr. Draghi. And in this case, I just highlighted a nice element regarding autonomous and automated system data processing and output, where it's explicitly mentioned to focus on development for automotive industry and mobility platforms, including advanced manufacturing and robotics, and of course including energy, because these things we're focusing on here with Ultimo as well are about EVs, they are electrical vehicles. So bringing digital transformation and the green transition into a twin transition, as it's currently called. Perhaps we'll hear a new name with the new commission, but currently the twin transition, I think, is a clear term. So now we have given back control. What does that imply for more the legal perspective or the policy perspective? Very quickly, all the way top left, you see the data strategy, which is the blue one. A strategy is blue. Top down, left down, left on the downside, you see the cybersecurity strategy. So just to what's the distinction? The green ones are more focusing on data and opportunity, where the yellow ones are a bit more focusing on risk, even though some are maybe considered both, but that is what we I try to do here in this particular part. The Data Act is part of it, but there are many other acts and directives applicable in all kinds of different domains, but the domains are intertwined with our mobility focus. Think about, for instance, financial data. We have the over-the-top interfaces, the user interfaces. We will definitely have something interesting there, even for financial institutions, and also the other way for the consumer. And perhaps we have at a certain point European digital identity wallet, which is currently under development, that can cater for planning a particular travel or planning a particular logistical journey, and also having that booked and paid for and confirmed, and even perhaps later on opening the shuttle or a vehicle if it's allowed or has a mandate to open it. So just my own ideas on that. So the Data Act is not only relevant or linked to the data strategy. When I look at all these regulations that are mostly have popped up the last couple of years, even though the GDPR has been around for a while, of course, 2016, 2018, the e-privacy regulation is not there yet, it's still under development. So some things are already there, some not. But at the end of the day, the Data Act really does enable and help out with a lot of other regulations and vice versa. When indeed the Commission did a webinar on this particular topic in November, as Daria mentioned, diving a bit more into the model contractual terms, interesting thing was that quite a few participants found it interesting to have access to particular product data for security reasons. So for vulnerability and threat analysis, which I think is absolutely a nice example that the Data Act does not only cater for having a better relationship with the supplier and the customer, or the customer having another relationship with many other stakeholders, but also focusing on, for instance, on risk mitigation, supply chain strengthening, and many other things. So the Data Act really brings in more than what you may think about. On one page, very quick what the Data Act is. The Data Act is already applicable for more than a year. 11 January last year, it has become applicable. It is not enforceable yet. It needs, as Daria mentioned, it will be getting into force later this year, which is September, giving all the market players, all the stakeholders, time to prepare. And that's also why we do this particular webinar. The motto is really user empowerment. So changing the paradigm of instead of having no control over data, not either vendors or manufacturers or providers not willing or not able, or willing and able to share whatever these excuses are, or there are true reasons. The Data Act changes that particular narrative into the fact that now, and that's in the middle, product data and related service data needs to be made available. It's mandatory. So that is really a big change in the data economy and data society thinking. Does that mean that there are no opportunities for the manufacturers? No, I think there are more opportunities for the manufacturers, even though we all need to get adjusted to it. That is definitely clear. All sides of the market, another reason why we do this webinar. And when I link it to the mobility domain that we talk about today, we have all kind of transformations we're focusing on. We're focusing more on continuous data-driven supervision. We don't learn drivers anymore. We're learning vehicles to drive. We try to learn how to do multimodality and also multiple operating and business models with the same vehicle, instead of having it in the garage from 11 in the evening until 6 o'clock, which is a waste of assets and waste of use of resources. We're moving from fossil to renewable. There are many other, of course, alternatives than just EV, just to be clear, and all kind of other capabilities and transformations that are part of this whole movement that we are helping out with in the ULTIMO project. According to the European Council, not according to me, but according to the European Council, at the data economy, the data economy will be catered for. Again, it starts in 25 in September, with 26, 27, and then let's say 2 years and about 3 years or less, according to the European Council, which are the member state representatives. It's expected to generate more than 270 billion euro additional GDP. I think if we do our job properly, then it's a low number. But if we don't do anything, then we're not getting anywhere. So really, the unlocking, you see the enthusiasm even with the member states. So how they came up with the number, I don't know, but probably 10 billion times 27 countries, member states, I don't know. But hopefully there's some bit more science behind it. I'm not going to plow through all the Data Act topics, but I do need to, of course, give you some comfort there an explanation, because I'm opening up the floor later on in a Mentimeter and ask you some questions. So it is good to stay with me here on more a couple of legalities, which are quite relevant to understand what the Data Act is about. First of all, the Data Act is a mixed bag of different elements and different components. One of them is data sharing, but there are also other topics in. For this particular webinar, we're only focusing on the data sharing part. There's also interoperability. There's also switching and exit, so basically business continuity and switching data sets and workloads from one cloud provider or data process provider to another. It is relevant for this topic, but it's going to be too much. So really focusing on the first part of the Data Act, which is about sharing data. So it's not it doesn't include a full cookbook or a manual on how to, but it does give the right attributes to cater for thinking about what can I do with my data, what can I do with the data, how can I work together with the manufacturer or another data holder, do I want to include or share or work together with others like third parties, and etc. And of course there are also some safeguards and guardrails to make sure that all these particular main stakeholders have again comfort that they can actually share without being hampered or having a detrimental effect to their particular rights that they have. The first 5 chapters is, I think, most out of 11, but first 5, as I mentioned, that is the first part, is about, and we're going to talk about a little bit about data sharing, as I mentioned, is business to business, but also business to consumer. So even a consumer, an individual, a natural person has rights under the Data Act. And business to business does not imply that the business to business, the customer user needs to be a private sector business. It's any customer user in any sector, so it can also be public sector. So it is, that's also why we do this webinar for the PTAs, PTOs, and others, other sectoral public sector organizations that are part of this domain. Because again, mobility is never only about a vehicle. There are obligations, as I mentioned already, a mandatory side, and of course it needs to be balanced out. We do need some contractual terms to cater for those relationships, and of course these should not be unfair. And there's a particular even chapter about that. And chapter 5, I'm gonna skip for now. What are we talking about? I already mentioned data is only 4 letters. Under the Data Act, basically every data classification, every data set you can think about, personal and non-personal, metadata, login data, derived data, is part of data. So it's very, very broad, catch-all, if you will, definition. And metadata, product data, and the services that are related to the product data are mentioned. I put them here in the slide. Just to give some more idea, the data gives guidance on what that would mean. Also, because we can't ask can't ask manufacturers to do something if they don't know what to do with it, what to do and how to do it. So that's what the Data Act caters for. I'm skipping digital assets, but that is basically code, where data, of course, digital data is code as well. But this is also compute code, like formulas, algorithms. But that's more for the last part of the Data Act regarding switching and exit. So where you can transfer, switch, and port both data and data asset depending on what you have available. The obligation to share is there, but also the obligation to make a product accessible to the user. That's Article 3. That's a big one, right? And then that needs to be, obligation is there, and it's enforceable from September already. So it's 9 months to go. We're focusing, of course, on products that have certain connectors that either emit, generate, or otherwise process data. So we talk about connected products, and the services are part of it as well. So also the over-the-top interfaces we just talked about, like an app, are part of this and in scope of the Data Act. It does give already some quite practical attributes on what that should mean. so how should the data look like? What kind of format, whatever. It doesn't say, of course, what kind of format on the norm level, but it does give it does say it needs to be structured, it needs to be comprehensive, it needs to be commonly used, and also not only human readable but machine readable as well. There are three main stakeholders in the Data Act. One is the customer user. You see it at the bottom. Can be the buyer of the asset, can be the owner, but it can also be just the rentee or the lessee. So also OPEX models are part of it, meaning that a lease company or a financial institution could be owner of the vehicle, where a PTO or a distributor or a logistical company is using it to a particular extent, either 100% or joining forces with other partners in the mobility domain. So a user is also an operator. I mean a person. Even though we don't have a bus driver anymore, it can go quite far. So it's both professional and consumer level that we talk about here on the user side. That's of course the one that gets that is empowered under the Data Act, customer user. Of course, very important is the data holder, which is the manufacturer, the ones that is more upstream, as I call it. It can be a manufacturer, can be also the one that is offering a service to a customer user. It doesn't need to be the OEM itself. So all kind of different supply side stakeholders in between as well. So you can see there. I just give a couple of examples here. That is just examples that I put in here, by the way, not literally coming from the Data Act. So and then the third one is the let's say any third party that a customer user believes makes sense to share data with, which is the user has a right to do so. It's Article 5, Article 4 as well, and we call those people, those organizations, data recipients. So basically, you could an example: the PTO has access is allowed to access machine data or product data, and it could, for instance, share it with the Ministry of Infrastructure or the local maintenance, road maintenance, or whatever. Just an example. That could be a data recipient as well. So when I break it down we have customer user, we have the holders and the recipients. I just leave a couple of examples that we came up with so far in the ULTIMO project as well. Definitely not exhaustive, but it gives you some flavor of what could be a customer user, also because you are basically representing I think most sides, all sides of the market this afternoon. So it's nice to have a look and to think about, get your head around a little bit on where you are. The fact that you are somewhere upstream from a PTO does not imply you're only data holder. There are also, of course, other parties even more upstream. So don't forget about those as well. So we are, as I mentioned, we are recipients and we are sharers at the almost same time, depending on where you are in the ecosystem. So I'm skipping a couple of slides on the data, but just very quickly, because I'm still at the data sharing part. As I mentioned already, data sharing needs to be fair, reasonable, non-discriminatory. If the data recipient needs certain assistance or certain capabilities of the data holder, it is allowed under Article 9 data holder to ask particular fair compensation, reasonable compensation. But of course, hopefully, if we are a little bit further in this domain, then data holder, manufacturer, an OEM or provider has those capabilities available in general, and meaning that they don't need to incur costs all the time. It's hopefully one-time investment, and then of course keeping it up to date. So the user really is protected under the Data Act. So anything that we put on paper that is detrimental to the position of the user will be non-binding. So that's something to keep in mind. or to share with your compliance or legal departments later on. So I'm skipping a couple of these. Interoperability is important, open standards, so those kind of things. Data spaces, perhaps some of you know about that, is mentioned well. Mobility data space is mentioned multiple times, I think 12 times in the data strategy already from 2012, 2020. So just a second, please. But that's not the main focus of today. But at a certain point, if we start sharing data, when we have multiple stakeholders sharing data, you start creating a little data space already. And it doesn't need to be an all-encapsulating data space. So things can start in the logistical domain, mobility domain, relatively quickly already. And really, data space is just a conceptual thinking, a concept. So don't feel too discouraged about it. As soon as you start building up the data sharing ecosystem, basically this is a data space. Oh yeah, sorry, I almost skipped this one. Already mentioned, the European Commission together with experts are drafting, creating a tooling to help out the markets on all sides with fair and reasonable contracts and terms. In this case, we talk about the model contractual terms of data access and use. These are just inspirational terms, so they are non-binding. It's not like the or it's not a binding set, but you know, we of course the Commission hopes that these will be used and will help out to spur data sharing, benefiting all sides of the market. That is of course the main side. Not only the user, but you know, the user can do a little bit of things with data, its own data it gets, but of course starting to share it in all kind of ways. That's where you create a data economy and data society at large. So I'm not saying I'm just been talking for about 45 minutes that now you know everything about the Data Act. I do recognize that. But hopefully it gives at least a little bit of flavor, and now we're getting into the fun part of it. So the Data Act gives control back to customer user, and then of course, yeah, it also has to take back control, right? If you have the certain rights to access, there's also at least a moral obligation, and if you're a public sector, there's probably a more than a moral obligation to also use the data to the maximum extent possible for all kinds of reasons. So you as a customer user are in control. And when we explain this to organizations anywhere in any sector, you say, okay, you now have control over product data and all metadata, all kinds of data. What are you going to do with it? Then it stays rather quiet. It's something so big. So the paradigm shift is so big that we really need to think about it, to get a head around it. And of course, now we're focusing on AV, on automated autonomous vehicles for mobility, for logistics, and see those multiple use cases, knowing that there's a massive demand on the one hand. On the other hand, not yet the right capabilities that can be procured, and all kind of other challenges on both sides again. The amount of opportunities for us all is massive. So let's take that in. Rule number one: don't think that the other one will do it for you. It's really you know, or that it's their fault or they need to do something first. Nope. We need to stop pointing fingers to the others. It's our responsibility to take care of these kind of things, to come up with value models, to come up with business models and viable models that you know, creates a serious autonomous vehicle market, and also serious use of it, and to the maximum extent possible. Again, to increase quality of life, to tick off all those boxes we just talked about, which is, you know, the Europe's choice or whatever you want to. And that is not only necessary in Europe because mobility is one of the main societal challenges, but also productivity-wise, economy-wise, is definitely urgent as well. So now you're in control, and we want you to. So while already the Data Act is there, we need to start thinking about and talking about how to do it. So how to become a customer user that knows what to do with data and work together with the manufacturer on the one hand and many other stakeholders, third parties, so data recipients on the other. To do that, I'm opening a Menti for you. You can already, if you want to, either go online or you just use a QR code that links to the menti.com. The code then is automatically loaded and you get to question number 1, which is just a opening question to get some flavor. And I will switch my screen to that particular Menti, if that works. It should be not that difficult. Also not that easy.
Yeah, I also send the link to the Q&A section and with the code. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
And just to update you, Arthur, we also have 3 questions in the Q&A.
Okay. All right. So warming up question. You know, we are myself currently today. I'm in Amsterdam, which is my where our headquarters is. But we're not only doing things here. This is just to see whether things work out and you were able to access this particular Menti. Perhaps, Daria, you can have a look at the question.
Okay, great. So
I don't want to touch I don't want to go to chat mode. I just want to.
Yeah, I can read it. Yeah. So the question number 1, so actually all 3 questions came from Cormac McKay. Thank you for your questions. The first one, do you think that current GDPR and EU data privacy rules are not sufficient, or what needs to be added?
Yeah, so this session is not really to talk about whether a regulation is good enough. You know, this is the compromise we have. This is what is published and been agreed upon. Definitely, there's always room for improvement, but the Data Act does indeed nicely work together, or is harmonized with GDPR on personal data, and the Data Act does not override in any way the GDPR. The GDPR, in this case, if you talk about this particular topic, is still in the lead, if you want to say it like that. But we all know that in data sets, there will be personal data there, which makes it a bit more difficult, but still the Data Act does cater for that.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yep, the second question is a very interesting one, and I think it's something that we'll face also in Ultimo. Sharing data is nice, but sharing data means collecting data. So having, for example, 200 AVs roaming the city and collecting data, this will generate thousands of terabytes per day. Since these data are owned and generated by the PTO, they will need to store them, clean them, anonymize them, and etc. And this will create a tremendous cost for the PTOs, who are not data companies. So how this can be done in practice? Do we have third parties that will manage the data, like GAFA, JFA?
Yeah, so as indeed, when in one of the sites that we're running at Ultimo, one platform, just one platform on 4 wheels creates 6 terabytes of data per hour, as we recall. It's a massive amount of compute, massive amount of indeed storage. Whether the Data Act does give you the right to get access to the whole set, but you don't need to. You can also do it more on an attribution side, so you don't need to get everything in, because a lot of things may be white noise or not useful. But that's up to, again, the particular customer user, in this case, in this example, PTO. And as I mentioned, the PTO or customer user can appoint a third party, which we call a data recipient, as I just mentioned, for multiple data recipients on multiple topics to help out PTO with it. And of course, I am anticipating we will see certain data recipients that are providing or creating certain services for instance, PTOs or for other, let's say, sectorial customer users to help them out in not only access it, but also to create the right value out of those vast data sets. But it can also be one particular attribute that coming out that could be extremely useful and valuable for a PTO. So the PTO as customer user is definitely allowed, I think, to get those data recipients helping out. And again, it's up to the customer user, so the PTO, to it's at their discretion to whom they want to work with.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
So let me. Yeah. Sorry.
No, we have one more question, but
Okay,
feel
we'll
free.
do one more. Yep.
Yeah, so I will start with the question, and there is after that there is a long explanation. So the question: should this data be shared fairly with all providers so monopolies don't have an unfair advantage? So this is the question. I can also repeat it after the explanation. So with the use of more precise 5G mobile phone tracking data, which is anonymized, we could match targeted advertising, people going the same direction at the same time, and offer them shared mobility voucher, incentives for ride, carpooling. And this sort of approach had not been considered. The current advertising of heat and hope may not be the best use of funds. Rides and carpooling will become more practical and feasible with the advent of remote piloted shared mobility vehicles and autonomous robotaxis. Something Apple here, Google Maps data will also be used for by operators that could make them even more productive. They could offer this as a subscription model for those prepared to share a journey. This data could also be used for logistics providers. So again,
these are all nice. That is a very already good list of all kind of use cases. The fact that the fact that you have access to data doesn't, of course, justify you can do anything you want with it. You still have to comply to the rule of law, whether it's indeed the GDPR or the e-privacy directive. Still, there's also and many other regulations, Data Services Act, and what have you. But within the rule of law, there is a lot of opportunities indeed to work together. But this is just it's a long list already, but there are many others that I think could be interesting. Whether that is the marketing side, anyway, whether that is the one to start with, I'm not sure, but I do understand that is of course interesting as well. So I'm going to thank for the first questions and see whether I can. I can get this going to the next. Yep. So I already see some people that have been looking at question number 2. So where we, after my initial little intervention or explanation of what the customer user is, do you consider yourself customer user? In this case, the first one is I do. The second one, not really, more upstream. I think we may have more data holders and manufacturers and others upstream participants in this particular call, or now more side stream, so more the data recipient helping out PTO or a logistics organization or any other customer user. Currently you have 0 there, which is interesting. Perhaps we have them, but we need to talk about it a bit more. But definitely more than only the customer holder or recipient. And indeed, I'm not sure yet. Definitely, that's why I put it in as an option to as well. You know, we need to investigate and where your position is, what kind of opportunities there are, what kind of data may be interesting to have, with whom it may be interesting to share, etc., etc. Those kind of things is really time now to think about it. But also, as I mentioned, and Daria mentioned it in your introduction, the customer user, for instance, a PTO, PTA, also need to think about the pre-procurement and procurement topic. So if you're considering doing something in this domain now or are working on it, it would be a pity that not putting it already in a pre-procurement or procurement documentation, because September is 2025 sounds far away, but it's not. So it's really about preparation, and I'll have discussions then with whether it's a pre-procurement consultation rounds, depending on what kind of tendering you are doing, to find out how to do this and how to make this interesting for all the stakeholders. So that is really important. So we're not sure where we are, what kind of role we have. Probably have multiple roles, but it's definitely interesting and important to already start thinking about it now. And then, okay, now I have that control. I'm in control. When you are in a sitting next to a pilot and you have a dual control a plane or whatever it is, and the other pilot says, you have control, then you have the control. And that's also why I use I have control, basically based on that, thinking about a cockpit with two pilots. So we really need to prepare for that, and not only start learning it when we're already in the air, right? So we can hit the ground running, as also is mentioned in the mission letters, and I think that's what we try to help out with here. So thanks for this one. I'm going to move to the next question. So indeed, I have control. Yes, I'm ready for it, or I'm not ready yet, which would probably be the most fair question, because the Data Act is new. It's a new paradigm shift. To get a head around it, it takes a while, but of course I'm happy to see that we have participants today in this call that already are very positive and have a lot of confidence that they already have control. And yes, you have, but now what is definitely currently winning here with in this particular small poll with 19 answers. So good to see. So thank you for that. Let's see, question 3. Yeah. I'm gonna first do some more questions, and then I'm moving back to my slide, because I have a document where, or let's say a slide where I put multiple elements on that I think are relevant to see how to co-create and shape the market together. Not only shaped by demand side, not only shaped by supply side, not only shaped by regulation or policy makers. So it's the whole combination, and also not only. And of course, don't forget society again, the ones that are never in these calls, to think about. We can do that a bit later. But Daria, you wanted to say something? Sorry.
No, just to mention that we have a couple more questions in the Q&A.
Okay, since then. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So first, it's more like a comment rather than a question, referring to the previous question on the data stored by PTOs. So the conclusion is that PTOs will have needs to develop new expertise and data business model. Okay.
Yeah, of course. The data science part of the using data, which is a set of data that generally PTOs have not been able to work with in most cases, is definitely new, exciting domain where you need to build up competence. Definitely. And of course, as I mentioned, you can also ask for help with through a data recipient or otherwise, of course.
Mm-hmm. The next question is related to the competition with other countries. So it's 2 questions in one. Will the EU data regulation be good enough and be able to be implemented when we face economic powers like USA and China? And will the EU be able to regulate also foreign stakeholders to respect the European law?
Well, very good questions. Not generally or not immediately topical for this one, even though in other webinars I will be diving into these topics with a lot of ease. But I want to stick a little bit to what we're aiming for. Again, the Data Act does not block or let's say block sharing and working together with non-EU players. Just to be clear. That's not what the Data Act is about. Of course, there are certain guidelines. Again, the GDPR is there, so we talk about personal data, and I want to export that kind of data. Then, of course, GDPR has very clear and very strict rules about that. And there are also, of course, some particular protections for data holder manufacturers in certain cases if they've seen, this data is so highly valuable and sensitive that I can't reasonably share it with a particular customer user, then there is a mechanism in the Data Act that it can engage with the member state authority, the particular designated authority, to talk about that and to see how to cater for it. So there are also some. It's not a support desk, but there's also some controls and support for all parties. Okay, so thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah, the next question, current historical mobile phone data is saved and stored by governments and security services. There is a lot of tracking data saved for up to 5 years in some countries. Could data be saved fairly with all operators?
Well, the Data Act does again has an agnostic approach that the answer should be yes, but of course, again, as I mentioned also, depending on related applicable law, and I showed you just a couple of those, and I just mentioned GDPR, but it's definitely not only that. Of course, there is some, and by the way, the fact that, as I mentioned already, that GDPR is applicable doesn't mean you're not able to share, but then you probably have to share another attribute. So not let's say the raw data, if you will, the source data, but perhaps another level. So there are some things. It's not that you can always fork over everything, right? So there are some balances to be discussed and put on paper.
And
I will go to the next question, and then we'll go to the next slide if you don't mind. We can,
it's great. Yeah.
Okay. But thanks for already raising these. That we at least we covered already a few. Thanks for already you were looking at the Mentimeter already answering this. So I have control. I want to use it for a particular purpose. We put a couple of those in. These are sort of linked to also the webinars that the European Commission gave in November, where these were more focusing on the relationship between the customer user, again, that is empowered, and then of course it can either share or work together with the data holder for a particular reason, but it can also, as I mentioned, share and work together with data recipients. And here we talk about, we have an existing relationship, can be aftermarket, can be with other providers. I mean, while not, of course, competing against the main the data holder, but also working with the data holder itself is part of that. So that is the first one, existing relationships. Of course, we can develop new relationships. We can develop new, hopefully work together on developing new products and services. Definitely one of the main goals here to spur innovation and collaboration and sharing. Perhaps also to be able to work together better in a public-private partnership approach to finally, hopefully, being able to understand each other a little bit better on public-private interest and values. Also raising trust, because with data, certain transparency can be raised at the right level. Therefore, you can also show almost a continuous level of trust that during a relationship. That's number two. Number three is non-commercial. Again, my example, sharing it with a road authority, sharing it with statistic bureaus, sharing it with whatever, all kind of different non-commercial activities. And of course, they'll just plainly sell and exploit it for compensation. Doesn't need to be euros or whatever, or any other currency, but of course, that is also allowed. Probably the combination, you have the nice thing about digital data with the data is that you don't need to think about, like, normally with, like this pen, I can share it with one person or sell it, and I don't have it anymore. But with, of course, data, you can have multiple tracks with the same data. So you can both do it for number one, to build and expand on existing relations. You can help develop new products, which you can, as a user customer, can benefit from. You can also share it again for non-commercial reasons, while also being able to share it for commercial reasons. So that's the nice thing about, of course, data. There's an infinitive amount of purposes at the same time, which makes it perhaps difficult to grasp. Let's start with one purpose, but just my enthusiasm that you can do more than just one purpose. All right, so moving to the next one. This is a little word cloud. I try to change a bit. This is about what kind of data sets could be interesting. So we just talked about in the earlier about the purpose. But what do you need? What kind of data and data sets do you need to make that happen? So what do you want? We just talked about, does the PTO wants 6 terabytes per hour per vehicle times massive amount of vehicles? The answer could be yes. It's up to the PTO. And others said, no, I just want to have these particular things out of it, and for the other part, I'm fine. Right? It's again the discretion of the customer user. So I've seen a couple of interesting things here on what kind of data sets. I'm not sure whether the question has been, I put the question correctly. I wanted to focus on what kind of data or data sets, particular classification would you like. But I do see, we need data to see whether we can reduce emissions, to reduce traffic, so be more efficient on the road. I like that one as well. Traffic management is there. You need more resilience, more privacy. So improve service in general. So of course, reduce emission is. I think these are all very good points that were made. Conscious of time, I'm do another one. So talk about where is that data? So we just talked about we would love to see this data of this particular purpose, but where is it? Is it with the PTO? Well, that's great. Is it with the OEM? Is it with the platform manufacturer? Is it with in the provider of the LiDAR, the cameras, or either external cameras or the cameras that looking inside the vehicle, which is not generally an ADAS provider, but another, et cetera, or is it just within with the platform and the interface? So it could also be the PTA, because they are in between the whatever the vehicle and the PTO, or anyway, that all differs in the region that you are in. It's good to think, not only think, okay, I have a product, and what if there's data coming out, what do we want to do with it, but also think about reverse, as we're trying to do here. What kind of data set would we love to have to improve a service, lower cost, improve efficiency, being able to share, raise trust in society and economy, have a better relationship with the vendors, creating more innovation, spurring innovation, and then find out and then have a look at where that data could come from. Is another way. Upstream, of course, is another way to look at the data. I think you're struggling a little bit with this question, so we will move to the next one. So you're a data holder, and so all the way upstream, and you want, of course, to work together with the customer. These are, you want to have a long-term relationship with them, not just a transactional action, because that's, of course, what connected products are not only about one single time of selling. There's a longer life cycle, which I think create a lot of opportunities there. So that's why we put a couple of ideas there, which you can also with the topics. The answers are similar to when you think about customer user, but you can also flip it around and what would the data holder, how would it want to offer, handing out opportunities to work together, further work together for a long time with a particular customer. That is an important one to think about. The Data Act is not there to bash data holders and say, we don't care about you, we just give the data to the customer user. This is not what the Data Act is about. It's really, again, spurring the data economy and the data society at large. So it's good to get your head around it not only today, but also hopefully later on when you think about this a bit more. So I am going back to for now I'm going to open it up for other questions, Daria.
Okay, so we have a couple of more. So the first question about the monitorings that you mentioned like 15 minutes ago. Yeah, how should they take place?
Sorry, can you repeat it?
How the monitorings that you mentioned should take place.
The monitoring, so I don't understand what the monitoring.
Yeah, so if the user who asked the question can elaborate a little bit more,
please.
Because it was 15 minutes ago, so of course it's a little bit okay. Meanwhile, then I will.
It's fine if perhaps the colleague may want to explain it a bit in this call. Please do.
Yeah. So meanwhile, while it's happening, I go to another question. AI traffic management will be able to clean the data and make it usable better than traditional human planners. How will the EU AI Act affect data use, if any?
Definitely smart algorithms, smart formulas, either small language models or large or any other AI capabilities, because there are 99.9 times more than only these two I just mentioned. All there, of course. Data is, of course, the main ingredient to crunch and to use algorithms on. You need a little bit of compute for that, either on the edge, or in the vehicle itself, or in the local processing, or a bit bigger, depending on the use case. It's definitely part of the equation, so it's not blocked. Of course, there are again applicable law there as always, but no, it's not. I don't. Whether it can better clean up, I don't know. If it's too much, I think we definitely need some technical capabilities to help us out with. That 6 terabyte trying to plow through it as a human being is going to be a bit of an issue.
Okay, good. Meanwhile, we're coming back to the previous question. So in one of the slides in your presentation, one on the chart, you mentioned that Data Act will be monitored. So how will it happen? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was talking about the digital decade 2030. So that is monitored. So that is one, of course. Any act and the directive is monitored. A European one is, of course, monitored by the Commission, whether it works or not. Right. But we are very early phase here with the Data Act. So probably just again hit the ground running is the main focus for now. But when the monitoring we talked about was about the digital decade 2030 objectives that the member states signed for. And indeed, every year the European Statistics Bureau is issuing, has started measuring and monitoring from particular points, and then see whether there is there's a clear route towards the particular objectives and targets. So that's the monitoring mechanism I was referring to.
Okay, so it was the last question. So we have 5 minutes till the end. So I will put on just the last slide, which we have, and we have time for a very, very last question. I don't know if there is any. Okay, so for now I don't see.
So I don't want to go back to my presentation. When the colleagues see it, you'll see it looks back to the blog all the way at the end. That it, where I invite everybody to join the data sharing evolution or revolution, if you will. It's our choice. It's your choice to really make this work. And it's not again only focus about one particular use of a platform, and I think that will create a huge market for manufacturers and all kind of other providers, and provide the right service offerings to the demand side. So yeah, hopefully everybody in the call is partially or at least partially as enthusiastic as we are in the project.
Yeah, thank you. So I think now it's time to come to the end of today's webinar, and thank you all for being here. So I hope indeed, so I agree with Arthur, if you have better understanding and more prepared for the upcoming changes that all wait for us. We also look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, so which I already think can announce. It will be on the 20th March, where we will discuss the demand and supply in the AV market. So stay tuned for more information. Thank you a lot, and have a good evening.
Have a nice day.